Hello, and welcome to this episode of Ron's Reviews here on OpenOrg TV. We're here today with Open Organization Ambassador Ron McFarland, who's taking us through his thoughts on another book that he's read less recently than some of the others we've been discussing lately. Ron's going to take us through some writing he's done a couple years ago that's still very relevant today. So today we're going to be talking about successfully starting projects in an open fashion. And Ron, thanks a lot for joining us and for taking us through this.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. This is a real nostalgic presentation for me because not only did I write it and study it and such, I actually used it. And actually, it was one of the strategies, the strategy within this presentation I used, and it really started to develop the career that I had in sales training.
Great. That's fantastic. So this one's been field tested, in other words.
It certainly has, and it's been, modified, and you can improve on it and such. And I really don't consider myself an academic guy. I am a practitioner. If I want to study something, I want to use it immediately for me. Kind of a selfish way to go about it, but I'm more of a practitioner than I am just a guy that'll do research and write a book and then try to sell the book. I really want to use the content. And this presentation I actually used. I should say the content within it I actually used on it.
Fantastic. But anyway, well, why don't you take us through it? Teach us something today.
So anyway, I titled it. Now we've played around with the title a little bit. I call it Successfully Starting Projects, Effective Strategy for Launching Something New. Now this could be internal within a company, or it could be something that you want to hear again, outsourcing. It could be an independent project. It could be some volunteer work. It could be a whole string of things. And so I just want you to bear in mind this is very, very flexible. And this is the article we talked about, and we wrote this together. I think it was now 4 years ago. That was January 26th of 2017.
Unbelievable.
You remember doing that, huh, Brian?
I do.
Okay,
seems like yesterday, but wow.
Yeah.
4 years ago.
I want to let the audience know that yes, I put the material together, but you were very, very instrumental in doing the editing and doing a lot of the work. So you say I put in the content and you made it readable. So I appreciate that. But this is the original article, and you're going to have a link to this in this after the presentation or with this presentation, right?
That's right. That's right. Yep.
And this is the book that I actually got the material from. But the real key to the book is not the whole book, but you'll see there I've got by Anand Sharma of TBM Consulting Group. Actually, it was his data. It was his strategy that I really, really tied into. And that's what I really, really used a lot. And I tried to contact him. Here again, this book is, it might be up to 15 years old now. And I think he left them. I think he started the company actually, and then he retired. He's an older guy. I think he retired and such. I tried to contact him and wanted to let him know that we're using his material, but I haven't gotten any feedback back from him. But this is where the material came from. Okay, getting into the presentation. So when you start a project, any project you start, you have to bear in mind that you're going to get both support and resistance in the initial stage. And in that book, they did a little study. It's in one study, they learned that 83% of the people do not support you in the beginning. What happens in the early stage, they really don't know what's going on early in the stage. So no one is really going to come to your rescue and support you most of the time. And I did this within Isuzu Motors. And what I was trying to do is I was trying to get the company involved in overseas sales training. That was basically going to our dealers, providing sales training so we could sell more trucks. And in those days, I was working with Isuzu Motors here in Japan. And Japan is and still is a major exporter of vehicles around the world. So it could be Southeast Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, many, many regions around the world. And I wanted to, particularly for the smaller, weaker markets, that didn't get any training. I wanted to work with them, and no one knew what I was talking about. No one could thought it would be possible. But bear in mind, as you go around, you're going to find people who will support you. They'll go out and support you. They can see the value of what you're trying to do. In this particular survey or study, 70% of the people would support you right from the beginning. And those are the people you want to find. And they're going to be really that's the community that you want to work from. And interestingly, if you have a project and you show them a successful pilot project, 60% of the people who will support you after seeing a pilot case succeed, and they think it's safe to try it. So what happens is, in my particular case, my first seminar was in Singapore. We decided to go with Singapore, and it was a success. And I started showing that to other channels around within Isuzu Motors. Basically, there was 3 channels. One is the General Motors channel, of which they sold around the world an Isuzu product, but it's under the General Motors name. Another one would be in the Isuzu Motors channel, of which that would be maybe they had an assembly plant. And it's the larger markets that Isuzu Motors really didn't want to get involved with General Motors. They wanted to do it by themselves. And then there was a third channel, and this was a distribution company that sold to the smallest markets in the world. So this is like Fiji and Malta in the Caribbean, I mean, in the Mediterranean, very, very small markets. And that's where I started this whole project, in those smaller markets. But the larger markets, they were resisting me. They didn't want to have anything to do with me. And when you're looking at different kind of people, you're going to find some people, no matter how good you are doing, they will fight you. They just do not want change. No matter, they want everything to be exactly the way they are for various reasons. Maybe they're close to retirement and they don't want to take any risks. Maybe it's just too much trouble for them. And maybe they don't believe in your project anyway. And for them, maybe there's no value whatsoever. So we have to identify those people and make sure that they do not interfere with the project. Bear in mind, this is not a lot of people. This might be one. In my case, I think it would be maybe 1 in 50 people. Most of the people, I should say, maybe 1 in 100 people. Most of the people are in that category of, they won't support you initially, but as time moves on, they will support you. But some people will fight you from the very, very beginning, and you have to identify them. So what is the leader do? So here's some steps for an open leader to successfully start a project. The first thing you want to do, here again, you're going to get your team together, you're going to build a community, and you want to have a particular single pilot project. From that, you want to identify and, of course, outsmart what we call the cave people, and I'll identify those cave people in a minute. Then what you want to do is, once you get your pilot project, you want to move very, very fast and very, very quickly. You want to have very early, maybe small, not so, let's say, glamorous success projects. With the success projects, then you can start building testimonials in these people who will, here again, he will fight with you, will weaken, and that's what you want to do. You notice from my earlier slide, I had a little case of a plant, and the guy is giving water to the plant. Here again, at the early stage, your project is very, very vulnerable, and you have to very, very carefully, just like raising children. You know, your child, when he's born, he can't walk, can't talk, can't do anything, and you've got to nurture him along. And with a new project, it's the exact same thing. You got to nurture him along. And the faster you move on this, the more higher the chance of success. And then finally, you might have your bosses. They are going to be the guy that are object to your project, particularly your direct boss. In my case, I went around my direct bosses and I got my budget somewhere else. My boss didn't dictate to me what to do and what not to do, because he didn't have a budget, because I work with the sales departments, the overseas sales departments within Isuzu Motors, as well as our customers themselves. That's the dealers around the world. They started paying for my trip. they started asking for me. So my direct boss could not say, no, don't do it. And so that's how you get around them. And then once you get around all those bosses, and now you can start to fully introduce the project to the entire company. And that's what I did. Here again, I started with the distribution company to the small markets, and that took about 5 years of successfully selling to those dealers in various countries. Then we moved into the General Motors territory, which is really, it's not selling to a dealer, but it's selling to, we have what you call a CKD. That's a complete knockdown vehicle. You export it to a country, it's assembled in that country, has some local content, and then it's distributed to the dealers in the country. So those are bigger countries. And then I did that in Latin America, quite a few countries, and in Africa, and in various countries that General Motors had. And then lastly, here again, it must have been 10, 15 years down the road, then I went into the Isuzu channel. But gradually it took me that long to go through all those steps.
Interesting.
Okay, getting to step number one, first, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, start with a pilot project that has value and a high chance of success, not a large, expensive global activity. And this is what you want to do, is you want to, here again, you want to make your mistakes in the pilot project. You want to show people the value, see where the mistakes are. In my first seminar, it was 4 days long. And to tell you the truth, Brian, half of that material was boring, and it was not important for the salespeople. And it took me quite a few seminars to get rid of the material that was not interesting, and get the material that they really want and really needed. And I knew that within sales training, you've got sales training and product training. Sales training is how to sell, how to find customers, how to meet customers, how to find out what customers want and such. But product training is really, what are the features on your product? What features does your competitors have? What features does the old model have? And how do you present that to the customer? The salesperson really has to know those features before he can do anything. And now I learned that in my pilot projects, exactly what was important, what was not. And it took me, here again, it must have taken me 6-8 months to really find out what the dealers and the dealer salespeople needed. And
but you started before it was perfect, right? And that's what's important in this example. I think you started before you had it perfect.
It was not perfect. I really was learning out as I was going. We knew that basically they needed product training. That was for sure. But sales training, there was a lot of fighting about, oh, the dealer is responsible for the sales. That's not the responsible for the manufacturing. And there was manufacturing. There's a lot of infighting about that. Why should I give them sales training? Because then they can sell anything, including our competitors. But my strategy is, if I can make sure that they can present our product well, they will want to present our product more than a competitor's model or something like that. And that turned out to be pretty true. And behind the scenes, and I didn't realize this until quite a few years down the road, when you start getting into sales training, you have a kind of a teacher student relationship going on. And people would start to respect me when I came to town. They would want me to come to town. They would ask for me because I'm trying to make them more successful and more profitable in their selling. So that's what was going on. And as I was going through this, I was finding key people that I needed. When I first started the project, actually, the training center asked me to just help them with translation. Here again, this is a Japanese company. We're all in Japanese all the time, and they were not very good in English and such, and they wanted to help me with translation. And then during that time, there was a guy from Chevrolet. He was just out of Detroit from Chevrolet, and not only from Chevrolet, but he was from the Chevrolet Training Center. And I talked to him about this and said, listen, I don't know. I have a business background and I have business degrees, but I don't know anything about vehicle sales training. And he says, well, I've been doing that for 10, 15 years or something. He said, can you help me just on the sales side? And so he was one of the key guys for the sales side of how to make a sales seminar. I had to change it a lot. I had to go from obviously a North American passenger car and to a truck from Japan, from Isuzu Motors. So I went from the passenger car to commercial vehicle business. I had to do a lot of modifying. But he was just like you're my editor for these articles. He was my editor for my training manual. Here again, this is going back many years now. It's 20 years ago now. But that was one key guy. He could help me develop the program, but not the market. Then there was another guy. He was from Buick, actually. He was in this joint venture with, in the distribution company, and he was the guy that actually recommended that we do our first seminar in Singapore. So that was the second guy. And then within Isuzu Motors, there was a lot of product training guys. And those were the three groups of people, I should say, that really got my project going. And the rest of the sales around Isuzu Motors, I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to have anything to do with them. They were just too big, too proud and such. And I knew that if I approached them, it would not be successful. So those are the people I wanted out of the discussion. And I wanted to, you might say, I wanted to make my mistakes in weaker markets. And that's how it all kind of played out. And here again, I mentioned this before, but don't expect too much from your very, very first time out. You want to be in this learning mode. And also the people in the room, they have to understand that too. You're going to make mistakes, and we have to learn from those mistakes. Because some people just think, well, you made all these mistakes, we might as well give up, might as well quit. Doesn't work, can't be done. So you're going to make sure the people in the room can see the value of your particular project. Okay, now this is what I talked about. I mentioned outsmarting the CAVE people. CAVE is an acronym for Citizens Against Virtually Anything. We think of a cave person, of a human over 100,000 years ago that lived in a cave. And you remember, Brian, when we did our article, you brought up the idea of the guy living in the cave. He wants to stay in the cave. He's comfortable in the cave. I never thought about that. And I remember you edited that into our article. Remember that?
I did not until you reminded me, but it just strikes me as that's a personality type you might meet in any organization, is the people who are resistant to change, like you were describing earlier. Those folks seem like they're already comfortable where they are, right? And so change is frightening to them, and frankly seems like too much work, right? So
that's right. And also, interesting enough, you think of a cave, you've got an image of a cave in your mind, and you can get the feeling that that is his comfort zone. So we use the term comfort zone, and you've got to stretch. You've got to move out of your comfort zone. Do something you're not really good at. Do something that you're kind of vulnerable at. So you're out of your comfort zone, which means, just like in your example, of getting out of the cave. Okay, continuing on here, the first thing you want to do is you want to recognize these people. And for me, the best way to recognize it, first, if I ask someone about a particular project, I'm trying to do a particular project, the first thing I want to think is he quiet? Is he nervous? Is he excited? Or is he, let's say, non-responsive? And I want to identify that guy if I can identify. Now, some of these people, they may not be cave people. They just don't understand what you're talking about, which doesn't necessarily mean they're against it. They simply don't understand the value of what you're trying to present. And you have to, over time, here again, maybe in your first pilot run, you will bring them along. And sometimes these people are not recognizable too early. But once you identify them and you make sure this guy, he really is not interested in, he has no value in our project whatsoever. He is not interested, and he may even fight it. So once you identify him, then you want to make sure that we are going to control that guy. Sometimes here again, it may be 1 in 100 people, but that 100th person may be so noisy, so negative, that he will kill the project before it really gets off the ground, in spite of the other 99 people wanting the project. So this is where these people are extremely dangerous. They're good at killing things. They're not very good at starting things. So we have to avoid them at all. And of course, keep them away from the activities, uh, and make sure that they don't get involved. They will not impact or negatively impact the project. And what you want to do, of course, at the same time, you want to find the people who will really support you. He's the guy that he may have concerns or worries or something like that, but he really wants to do that. So he's looking for solutions. He's looking for how to solve those problems to make the project successful. And also maybe he may have some skin in the game himself. He wants to get something out of this project as well. So he may be very excited about it, but very nervous with certain challenges. So he could be a supporter, even though he has some doubts and concerns at the early stages. And as you move through with you hear again your successes, that confidence will start to grow. And lastly, you're going to have a lot of internal meetings, a lot of collaboration and information sharing and such. And then you move in the direction of your pilot project. And here again, I gave you my example of my first sales seminar. That was in 1985 in Singapore. And it was a dealer that was just about to go bankrupt. No one cared about Singapore is a little tiny island. It's equivalent to, some a large American city. That's how small Singapore is. So anyway, that's a let's say, threatening place to give the first seminar. And then from then, soon just north of there in Malaysia, they learned about it. And that's where I gave 4 more seminars on the same content with different products. And from that on, then I started to rewriting it and improving the program. And right after that, I had to do it in Central America, which means taking all that material and putting it into Spanish. So I had to work through translation. But that's why I gradually modified the seminar and got it better and better and better. And this is how the process moved. And as we went through that, my confidence was growing. The entire company's confidence in terms of sales training was growing, but it took a long time to get people on board. Okay, now getting back to our people. So people who want change. So finding the people in the 17% group that want change is not easy. Okay, it's not easy to find these people. Sometimes people will say, "Yeah, that's very interesting. Oh, I'm very excited." In reality, they will fight you. In reality, they're not giving proposals and not really going to be responsible for anything. So you got to be very careful in the early stage. I remember after a long time after giving a lot of sales seminars, all of a sudden people are coming around and they want to be my staff and they want to be part of my team and such. But I knew that all they wanted to do is kind of catch my wave. But they were not interested in getting in front of a lot of salespeople and convincing those people that there's a selling process that can help them sell. So you've got to be very, very careful in your selection, not only of the people that will be supported, but you've got to be very careful of these negative people that will fight you. So what I'm trying to say here is you need not only people that want change, but they want to get involved. They want to play a role. I remember as time went on, the people in various sales departments, they were starting to promote my sales seminars to their dealers in various countries around the world, because they knew after a few pilots, after I gave a few seminars, then the sales were starting in other territories and they wanted to tap in on that. And then in that time in history, every 2 years, there was the Tokyo Motor Show. During the motor show, dealers and distributors, assemblers, and finance people from Detroit, they would be all coming in. They would go to the motor show, but also we would have a major conference. During that conference, I was talking to the dealers themselves directly of what I was doing in various regions around the world. And then those dealers would ask the Isuzu sales department for training, and that sales department would ask me, and I'm in a training center. So I was building a market for myself or a network for myself that way. But what I want to do is what I'm saying here is you want to get a team together that all want to do something with what within the project. They want to benefit from the project, and they want to play a role within the project. We don't want a lot of you know back in the room observers, particularly at the early stages, because if you have, I'm sure, Brian, you've had this many cases when you're in a meeting and you want to discuss something. If you have a lot of observers around, people tend to shut down. They're not as open. They're not as collaborative. They don't share as much information. They're not as transparent with a lot of people that are really not a part of the team in the
Right.
room. Have you
Mhm.
run into that?
I have run into it in some cases. I'm lucky that I work in a pretty open organization, and I see that less in this context than I've seen it in other context, like in my professional context now, than I have in other places. But for sure, I've seen that dynamic. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, as I say, sometimes you might have the most nice guy he's a nice guy and such, and he's not going to cause any trouble. But him just sitting in the back of the room kind of makes people shut down. And if you have too many people, I think I used to work with 3 or 4 people in the early stages. Best would be just one person, and he's going to be part of the team. He's going to play a role. I'm going to play a role. He's going to bring in, let's say, various important people. I will bring in various important people. And then gradually we build that group very, very slowly and carefully, depending upon what role each member is going to play. So anyway, just having observers. You might have some young people that are learning or something like that. That would be later on. But this early stage when everyone's quite vulnerable, I wouldn't want too many people in the room. So who are the cave people? Let's identify. These are the people that are always saying no, no, no. They're very good at killing projects and they don't start projects. In the US political environment right now, you know who those people are. They're not recommending anything, but they're attacking various people. And this is the type. So here are some of the things. Usually in a meeting, they're very, very quiet. They're not saying very much. There's little value for them. And I put this in myself. This is not in the book. Actually, I put this in. I think about each individual in the room and how are they going to benefit from my project? What is going to be the value to them? What are they going to enjoy from it? What is their major benefit? And such. And I know in my area in Tokyo right here, there's a lot of very, very small companies. And I've talked about globalization for some people have worldwide, let's say, competitive product worldwide. But I realized after a period of time that a lot of the people are old too, and they don't want to work that hard. They're in their comfort zone. They're in the cave, Brian. They're in the cave there, and they're happy in the cave. So why
Right.
would you bring them out of the cave if they're happy in the
It's
cave?
secure. It's warm. It's safe. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, if I can identify that person, then I can respect his position on it. But here again, I will want him out of the project. I wouldn't want him involved and such. These people are always very, very negative. They talk in terms of buts, ifs, and whys. Now, bear in mind, someone who has real issues that they want to address and they want to challenge those and they want to solve them, that's a different type of guy than just someone who is throwing out, but this is not working. Why should we do this? And throwing out and not really coming up with a
Hmm.
suggestion or an answer or some kind of solution.
Yeah. It
They're always
reminds me of
asking for
an
more
article.
information.
Hmm. Yeah. It reminds me of an article that we published a couple of years ago too, from another open organization ambassador who was writing about not cave people, but what you called the grump, right? That the person who is the no, but kind of person. But one of the things that she recommended in the article, I think it was like 10 steps for it sounds a lot like your list, but 10 steps for sort of working with that person. It can be really difficult, but the one thing that she advocates is to really listen to that person, because in some cases, like you said, what they say can help you avoid errors down the road, right? It's just there's a difference between no with no context and no and let me explain my position to you because I've been there before and I've made those mistakes. And here's what you're going to run into. I want you to succeed, but I want you to avoid my mistakes. Let me show you what I did that failed. You know, oftentimes they have the experience that can be valuable in their no, you know.
Yeah, but that's major problem solving. So he is really not a cave guy. The cave guy really wants to kill your project. He wants it to die, as opposed to bringing out major challenges that we have to address. Maybe I hadn't thought about that, and those are valuable people actually, because they are looking for solutions, even though they're bringing up concerns, but they're also looking for solutions as well, and so they're valuable people as opposed to this cave guy. He is really, he does not want a solution. He will be disappointed. He will be brokenhearted if you solve the problem because he wants to kill it. This is how drastic this guy is.
Right.
Okay, and carrying on here, he asks someone else, asks if someone else has done something. So he wants here again, precedent, has someone else done it? If no one else has done it, why should we be the first? Let someone else, let's say, be in the front of the line to take all the bullets and such. Let someone else do that. So here again, he doesn't want to take too many risks. He's always worried about making mistakes. He's here again. This is what I mentioned earlier. He spends more time on problems than solutions. Considers every failure. It's a trend. See, you made a mistake here. This is the trend. Everything is going to be failure from now on out, where that may not necessarily be. He's just looking for an excuse here again to shut down the project. He avoids responsibility. He gets busy with other things. If you give him some responsibility, he will be the slowest guy to return. He really won't care. So basically, over time, you'll have to withdraw that request and ask him to be responsible. You'll have to withdraw it and just say we're not going to be. We're going to reorganize our activities here and move those activities really to someone else. Because here again, just stalling people will kill a project. Too long of a delay will kill a project, and also it weakens a project. I remember there was a case in Europe. Here again, this was Isuzu Motors and General Motors. They were making a joint venture for selling commercial vehicles in Europe, and they were negotiating. My God, it was in 3 or 4 years. And by the time the company was created, everyone was so exhausted that I think it died after 2 or 3 years after that, because they were so exhausted just doing the setup of the joint venture. So here again, time slowing things down will kill people. Next is you attack people or situations instead of here again studying the problem. Uses facts that sound bad but can't be confirmed. Just saying something like it's no good. They're saying something like everyone thinks it's a failure, and no one can define who everyone is, and you can't define what a failure is. So you can't confirm what he's talking about there. And of course, there's a lot of emotion as opposed to. So Brian, do you get a feeling now for our guy here, our cave guy?
Yep.
As I say, this is different than the description you gave me earlier.
I see.
Of bringing up concerns is a valuable guy. You want him in the room. This guy will really do everything he's doing. He's doing it because he wants to kill the project. He won't say it outwardly, but that's what he wants to do. Here again, this is not a lot of people, but it might be that one guy that's going to attack your very, very vulnerable early stage project. Okay, and starting a project by using open organization principles. Now I want to apply our principles. And I think I want to do this, Brian, more and more as time goes on to make sure everyone, when we talk about open organization, we're really talking about these principles. And I start with this, with the community. So let's say our open leader has an idea for a project and wants to create a community to discuss it. So he first finds just one person who is very excited about the idea. For example, in my sales example, I went to the Chevrolet guy And he was more motivated than I was. I was confused. I didn't know it would work. I did a lot of teaching. I did a lot of business teaching, but I've never given vehicle sales training. And he's the guy with all the confidence. And also, it would be valuable for him too, because honestly speaking, he didn't have much to do. He was not a Japanese speaker. He could only go to the interpreters to do things. And I was running around. Of course, even in those days, I was speaking in Japanese. So I was building I was building a real nice project for him within Isuzu Motors. So he was loving it. He was motivating me more than I was motivating him. And he was giving me all the sales material. So I started with that one guy. And then we started gathering information. And he was giving me old seminars from Chevrolet, long. It was like a box of old, obsolete seminars that were given back in Detroit, and he was giving them. So I was bringing that to the table, and then through transparency, we're starting to bring in. All right, where can this be applied? Then I brought in the Isuzu people. How can we make this more commercial vehicle oriented? Commercial vehicles is a different business than passenger cars. Passenger cars are usually sold in a dealership showroom. A commercial vehicle is usually out there where the vehicle is delivered in the delivery bay or in the workshop or in the pickup station or where the drivers have lunch or in let's say a diesel engine truck repair shop or something. Outside of the dealership is usually where the sales is. So it's a whole different selling process. And I had to be transparent as much as possible. And that's where Isuzu Motors was very, very helpful in that. And then armed with the transparency, then we can discuss all these things. Then I can start to collaborate. Then I can start getting different opinions on what should we do? What should we not do? What should we avoid in the seminar? What should we bring in? And we started collaborating, and then we could start to move on. And as time goes on, looks like we need more information, particularly on the specifications in various markets around the world. What is common in one market is different in a different market. So I've got to include the people who know those different markets, and you had to bring them into the picture. And so inclusivity is very, very important. And of course, when you get into language, then you're going into a language translation, and you've got to include a lot more people. And as you move through, you're running into all problems. As I said, my initial seminar was 4 days long, so I had to change this. So just reading through this, our group has to develop a very small pilot project to test the program, to test the project, present it to a selected participants and ask opinions and make objections. So adjustments. And as we go through, we're adapting, and then gradually you're getting it cleaner and cleaner. And you want to make mistakes to find out what the problems are. So you want to make this a non-threatening environment, so you can make the changes and have that adaptability as you move forward. And if you're successful on this, after let's say several prototypes, our leader then he can move into, let's say, opening up for a company-wide introduction of whatever the project is, and you can expand on. You can syndicate it, or you can duplicate it as time goes on. But if there's a problem, you might have to go back to collaboration, make more modifications, make more changes and such, and then you have to start all over again. The important thing is you keep within these principles, and you make sure that those cave people are not involved in any of these things, and gradually they will just fade away. They'll never be part of the project. They'll gradually just fade away, and you'll move around them. So what do you think about this little loop, Brian?
Well, of course, I'm partial to these principles. We talk about them all the time, and it makes sense to me. But I think that, as you are fond of saying, you can start anywhere in this process, really. you chose to start with community and start your narrative there, but really, since it's cyclical, you can begin anywhere depending on your situation, which is nice.
Yeah, that's right. And the important thing here again, at the early stage of any project, it's really very vulnerable. And as we moved in with let's say, various, applications, someone in our group wants to start an app on some kind of project, or let's say we want to do more videos in that kind of thing. How do we move forward? And so we have to move through here. And it takes a lot of, we use the term, iterations. We're iterating all the time, right? We're modifying and changing, including our schedules too, because we're all over the world. Huh? Okay, let me carry on here now. Okay, now what about your boss? Let's say your boss doesn't want to make any changes. How do I outsmart that guy? The first thing I would do, and actually this is right out of sales training, I would have my pilot project. Here again, I've had my community, have my pilot project. Let's say with my boss, I would keep him informed, but just the very peripheral of what I'm doing. And I'm not using our budget. I'm moving along very carefully. I would do my pilot project. I would get some successes from that project. And then hopefully I will get some testimonials from that project. As I get the testimonials, my boss, my direct boss, he will start to weaken. He'll get weaker and weaker, and he really can't say it's no good when we already have success stories in place. So he cannot say it's no good, it won't work, there's too many problems. If you have several small success, and if you have testimonials, particularly from customers, that cave boss, he will start to weaken. And then after that, you can take it to the boss's boss. In my particular case, one of the biggest problems we had is we would have dealers around the world that could not sell. The first thing they'll do is they'll come to Isuzu Motors and they say, we cannot sell, please give us a discount. We have to sell at a lower price or else we cannot sell. And if we start discounting, we will basically go out of business. So before you offer discounts, ask them, well, how well are your salespeople selling? How well do they know the product? How many customers are they visiting every day? What are those customers saying? So you can find out if they really are doing a good job in selling. And if they are not, fine, we will give you sales training. Let us give you the sales training. And then if you still not can sell, let's explore a discount. What happened, Brian, is I started when the seminar really got going and the salesmen are giving better and better presentations. They're meeting more and more customers. They're really finding out what the customer's needs are and concerns are. The discounts started to go away. Now, armed with the lack of desire for a discount, we automatically were reducing waste, automatically we're increasing our sales as well as our profits. Take that to top management, and no one underneath him will really start to object. So then I can start to introduce it company-wide. And that's where it started to take off. And I did that for 21 years, Brian. 21 years of doing that. And this is how this all started. And moving on, this is moving on here. Here again, this is what I mentioned earlier. Then you're going to take it company-wide. And this is basically saying the same thing. Start with your successful sales project, announce it throughout the company, and then set a timetable. I mentioned the Tokyo Motor Show. And then during that time, it would be every 2 years. Every 2 years, I would set up a timetable for myself, and I would have sales seminars that would go throughout the year. Usually it would be, I think it was maximum 6 trips a year. One trip would be a month traveling, though. A maximum 6 trips. I think an average would be 4 trips a year, of which each trip would be anywhere from 4 to 5 weeks. You know, it'd be going through Latin America. If you go to Latin America from Tokyo, you look at the map, it's the furthest possible. You don't want to be coming and going and coming and going. So I would be traveling for a month in Latin America, a month in Africa, a month in the Middle East, a month in Southeast Asia, And that's how it gradually worked. And here again, this took several years to get through, but gradually I extended it and extended it. And that's how the career went. But I was following this process. Now, this is just a review here. This is just a review here. You start with you decide on your project. Then I identify my cave people. I find my supporters and I build my community. From the community, we start to collaborate. What are we going to do? What can we do first? What can we do? What is easy to do? What is a quick success and such? And then from that point, here again, actually determine the pilot project and deliver that pilot project. Identify my cave people and block them out. I don't want them in. I want to promote that pilot project, and then armed with some good testimonials from your initial pilot project, then you can take it to management, get their approval, and then you can start moving it company-wide, and you can start moving and growing this business more and more as you go through. So basically, that's the entire project, Brian. As I said, this has been very, very valuable for me. I am more of a practitioner, and I want to use whatever I study. So this is the way it all played out. And of course, this is the article that we wrote together.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Ron, and giving us that background, not just in your work from the book, but in your work from the field. Always great to have your experiences and your stories to supplement your reading list. If you're watching this video, know that we'll have links to Ron's writing in the description, and we'll also append this video to the article from several years ago, so folks can watch this after they've read the great tips. That's all for this episode of Ron's Reviews. And Ron, I want to thank you for being with us today, and as always, for sharing with us.
Well, thank you, Brian. I enjoyed it, and I hope some people can get a lot of good ideas from this presentation.
I think they will. I know I did. Thanks a lot, Ron. We'll see you next time.
All right. Take care.